Hello, everyone. Ooh, excuse me, and welcome to another episode of Strong Draws. My name is Brett Strong, and so today we are jumping back into the pencils for page 8 of Light Earth issue number 3. And like I said in the last video, um, just going to go through and show you guys how I do what I do basically. Um, do a page from start to finish, from layouts through pencils, and then eventually through inks to the final part of my job on the book, which is just doing the line art. So this video will be a little bit quicker than the last one, or a little bit shorter than the last one, however you want to say it, because these, like I said, I'm going to do 2 panels per video, and these couple panels went really rather quick. So again, if you guys like what you see, check out Light Earth from No Gravity Studios on Facebook. There's a Light Earth page and a No Gravity Studios Facebook page, which the links are in the description. Go check them out. Issues 0 through 2 are now available, and they can get them for you if you just shoot them a message over on Facebook. So, kind of like I was talking, like I said, this is just a continuation of the last video and penciling these troll-like creatures called monogles, going after our heroes here. And so, kind of the thing you always want to keep in mind when drawing comic books in general, and panel layout and composition. I mean, with comics, not only do you want to tell the story, but you also want to what's the word? Be as dynamic as possible with each panel, each pose, each layout that you come up with. And there's a few tricks or guidelines that you can kind of do to achieve that. One very simple thing to keep in mind is always keep things in I guess succession to a certain extent, to have something in. I mean, to the best of your ability, the more you can get something in the extreme foreground, then the foreground, then the midground, then the background, then the extreme background, the more dynamic it's going to look, just because you have so many things going back, like I said, kind of in succession. So with the panel we're working on, that we're working on here, I have 2 of these Mongols in the foreground, kind of overlapping each other, and then in the midground, I mean, I guess you could kind of say I got one in the extreme foreground. That's the one I'm working on here. The one behind him's in the foreground. Then we'll have our heroes in the middle ground. Then I'll have a background, which is kind of this wall, the castle. So that's a real kind of simple way to show dynamics within a panel, is to use as many planes that you can to overlap each other. Because the more you have overlapping, and the more you have that you show depth of field, so to speak, in this 2D art form that we do, the more dynamic and the more realistic it'll kind of look. So, again, just got the roughs in. I turn them blue and then go over with the pencils on a new layer. And again, even the pencils are in certain spots a little more loose. Some of it is really kind of finished. In this case, I don't do a whole lot of shading at this point. Again, I said this in the last one. Don't do really any rendering, or if I do, it's very, very quick, and just kind of give me an idea of what I'm looking at, and I add a bit more to it when I get to the inking process. So. I don't know if I mentioned in the last video, but I do kind of talk about it. when in my other videos. But I do have my Wacom Cintiq 12WX that I draw on, but I always keep another window open on my computer monitor so I can see what I'm doing. Almost to the point of where it's the same scale as a comic book page, so I know I'm not overworking an area, and I can kind of look up and double check my work, so to speak, so I don't have to keep zooming in and out. Because again, I've said this before, if you're working digital and you're this close as I am working on this, you can tend to get a little carried away. Or since I can't see, like in this shot, you can't see his head compared to his torso, compared to his legs, your proportions can get wonky real quick. So if you are using a Cintiq or any other display type drawing tablet, like spacing on the other kinds they have out there, I think the Huion I know makes one. If you can't see the whole character, you work this zoomed in. If you don't have a second monitor that you can pop pop up a second window on, it's good to zoom in and out to double check your work. But like I said, but if you do, like I do, you don't have to zoom in and out quite as much. So, all right. So now I'm just working on these our hero characters here. Excuse me, and getting them kind of roughed in. Also, kind of what I was talking about with dynamics and stuff. Capes. Luckily, I didn't get to design these characters or the costumes, so I was lucky that whoever did, or whatever direction they were given when they designed the costumes, they gave these guys capes, because they're a great way to show movement without actually doing a whole lot of work. Because if you make it flare out like that, then it shows, makes it a little more interesting to look at than having to worry too much about pose. I'll get back to kind of this dynamics thing. This will kind of show you, like, this panel really gave me a lot of headache. Being in above angle is really hard to draw everything kind of looking down. At least for me it is. So you're gonna see I started this in the last video, erased it all and moved on. You're gonna see I'm gonna do that here. I'm gonna work on this for a little while, not really like my results, and then I'm gonna move on to a different panel here in a little bit. And sometimes that's just how it goes, is when you're drawing something different or new or a different angle, sometimes it takes a while and you have to just eventually hammer through and figure it out, or look up reference, which I think I'm doing now, which is why my cursor isn't moving. So I was off looking up reference, trying to find something that would work for this, or trying all these different kinds of processes I've seen people use to break down characters and figures to get them in the right perspective and stuff. And like I said, I'll eventually erase all this because nothing was working, and I do figure it out eventually. You'll see in probably the next video that I eventually get this right. I think it turned out okay. I'm actually pretty happy with the way it came out in the end. So anyway, we're gonna move on to this. But like I was saying with dynamics, we'll get back to that point. Is the one thing I was taught when I went to school in my illustration classes was you want to try to find, especially with action sequences, the most, what was it? The most interesting point of action to capture. Like if you look at old Greek statues or old Roman, of the gods, of Zeus throwing throwing lightning or whatever, the pose they always picked was the most dynamic. So if you draw, in this case I got Rav holding his axe or fighting, driving it into someone's chest or swiping up. Or in the last panel you saw me draw, he's standing there in kind of a battle pose. Those, you gotta pick the point within the action that's going to look the most interesting. Because if you draw the panel before he hits the guy, right before it hit, the axe gets driven into that guy, not as interesting. If you draw it right after, where you miss the point of impact and the guy's just laying there dead, it's not as interesting as when the axe exactly hits that guy and the blood squirts everywhere and stuff like that. So, and there's also ways to, if you have the shoulders tilted one way, you tilt the hips the other way, it creates this kind of unbalance that gives kind of a sense of motion and again, more dynamics. There's Jim Lee did a great thing. I'll probably try and do I want to get to do a actual tutorial video about this, but if you imagine the chest cavity and your hips as two balls, and that they sit on top of each other and they can roll and they can move. The further apart you can get those, the more dynamic the picture looks. So, like I said, I'd like to maybe I want to get back to doing the tutorial videos, and I just haven't gotten to the point within that series, so to speak, to get to that far, get that far yet. So, one of these days, I'll hopefully be able to get a video up about that. So, like I said, these two panels went pretty quick. So, excuse me, we're about to get wrapped up here. Again, if you guys like what you see and want to see some of my other work and follow, kind of what I do outside of just the comics, I do others, obviously other sketches or commission work. You can follow me on Facebook or Twitter. Again, links are in the description. Again, go check out Light Earth and No Gravity Studios over there too, to keep up on the updates of what's going on with this issue and whatnot. So, gonna rough in some mountains, and this is again another way like talking dynamics. You got your extreme foreground, I've got middle ground, I've got background, I even got an extreme background in this one with the mountains and the moon in the sky and whatnot. So you're just gonna rough in some bushes and trees and where the leaves and the shape of the trees are gonna go, and got these this army of Mongols coming at the guy here. So anyway, I'm gonna wrap it up here. Just want to say thanks everyone for hanging out and checking out my video, and hopefully I'll have the next part up here in the next couple days. So we'll see you then. Have a good one. Bye.